As kids, my sister and I loved telling ghost stories and just being spooked. And I was also a huge fan of spooky shows, such as The X-Files, because as an 11-year-old, there was truly nothing better to me than watching a hunky Fox Mulder catch monsters with the sexy scientist, Dana Scully. But looking back, I do think one of the biggest reasons we were so into the supernatural as kids is because we lived in a haunted house. When we were little, the activity in the house was pretty harmless and kind of cool, like hearing your name get called when no one's around or seeing things move out of the corner of your eye. But nothing in the house felt malicious. Not until my sister met Morel. Before Morel, my sister was the high school cool girl. She did almost every extracurricular. She made incredible grades, and she quite literally knew almost everyone in the school. And despite being her dorky little sister, she never treated me like I was anything other than equally as cool, and we were pretty close. But all of that did change after Morel. They were 17, and Morel was also a cool girl who dressed religiously in Hollister and Ugg boots, and her aunt owned a club, and her and my sister would sneak out pretty often to party and do drugs, and as a 14-year-old, I didn't really find this abnormal activity for kids our age, but I also didn't particularly like that my sister was doing it. So when she came to me about an interaction that she'd had with Morel, I was mostly just annoyed. Apparently, after a night out, they had gone back to Morel's place, and Morel had confided in my sister that she was being followed by something. Something, not someone. My sister was confused and said she was trying to get more information, and as they were talking, Morel's room just turned red. I had no idea what the hell that meant, but I did know that they'd probably been doing drugs and they probably hadn't slept, and I really just did not take it that seriously and brushed it off. And then a few weeks later, my sister came to me again, this time clearly spooked. Megan, I've been having really bad sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is when your body goes into a state of paralysis, either right before falling asleep or right after waking up, and you're still fully conscious. And it's usually in that state that you can experience hallucinations. My sister had never experienced any of that before, and according to her, she had been experiencing this several nights over the last couple of days. I was concerned by how distressed she seemed, so we agreed that if it got really bad, she could just come and sleep in my room. No big deal. A few days later, she confronted me. Why the hell would you say that to me last night? I had no idea what she was talking about, so she proceeded to tell me that the night before, she'd had another sleep paralysis episode. But this night, I was in her room. And I was standing in the corner, and I was talking, but I didn't sound like myself. And this scared her so much that when she came out of the episode, she came running into my room, and apparently I screamed, "Get out!" I had no recollection of this. In fact, I didn't really remember the night before at all, but I did know that I would never say or do that to my sister, and that's when I started to get a little bit freaked out, which got a little worse when a few days after that incident, I also experienced sleep paralysis for the first time. It was terrifying what was happening, and what made everything worse is that the house was starting to feel different too. Darker, like there was someone or something watching and waiting. And then one night I'm home alone doing homework, and I'm sitting on my bed, and I'm leaning against the wall that connects to my sister's room. it's completely quiet. And suddenly across the whole wall behind me, from floor to ceiling, it's like multiple people are taking their fists and pounding. I wait a few seconds, and after it stops, I go into my sister's room to investigate, and there is nothing there. So yeah, things were getting pretty bad, and they just kept getting worse as my sister's partying and drug use also got worse. She was becoming physically, mentally, and emotionally drained. And it was like the house was an incubus, just sucking the life out of her. I was both scared of and scared for her. And I was also scared of the house. And although our parents knew something was off, we refused to tell them anything. So they remained oblivious, and my sister kept partying. And then she went to a party that got raided by the cops, and Morel got arrested. This kind of served as a scared straight situation for my sister, and she stopped hanging out with Morel pretty cold turkey. Almost immediately, the activity in the house and the sleep paralysis stopped. I wish I could say that is the end of her struggles, but my sister has had a rough life, and she has been in and out of mental health facilities over the last 16 years. A few years ago, she got into a physical altercation with our dad and ended up in another facility. And shortly after her admittance, my dad started to experience these horrible nightmares of a dark figure standing next to his bed, trying to strangle him. He would wake up either screaming or on the ground, having fallen out of bed, trying to fight the attacker. And in the process, he had scraped up his hands and knuckles pretty badly. When my parents went to visit my sister in the facility for the first time, she apparently looked straight at my dad and said, "How do your knuckles feel, Dad?" When telling me this story, my dad is clearly uncomfortable because, according to him, they hadn't been allowed to talk to my sister before this visit, so there's no way that she could have known that this had happened to him. And it's shortly after this encounter that he starts to throw out theories that maybe there's something going on with my sister beyond what we can explain. And although I can't deny that I felt the same way, someone experiences a mental health crisis, they start to feel like a completely different person, and maybe they are. I truly believe that the stigmas around mental health and possession are dangerous, and I also understand them. In my family, they were formed out of love and desperation and hope. However, as an adult, I tend to put most of my faith in science, and I still love a good ghost story every now and then, but the majority of my comfort these days comes out of knowing that most things can be explained. And nearly 20 years later, I now know that my sister had many underlying mental health issues that were probably exacerbated by the partying and drug use behavior in her teens. That being said, there are many things that we experienced as kids and as teens, and even as adults, that I can't explain. So I let myself control the controllable and also enjoy the fictional unknowns like sci-fi and horror movies. I actually recently started rewatching The X-Files, and I find that I'm way more connected to it as an adult than as a kid. Specifically, Mulder's storyline. Fox Mulder became an investigator of unexplained events after experiencing the abduction of his sister by aliens when they were kids. And he became determined to find her. Classically, there's a poster in his office of a UFO, and below it, it says, "I want to believe." Because he does want to believe, to validate his reality to prove his sister's alive and maybe to get her back. My sister is currently unhoused, and unfortunately, we don't talk. But there are many days when I, in an attempt to understand what happened to her and us, let myself imagine the unexplainable. Because often, I too want to believe. Thank you.